So my first question is actually to Scott. Blockchain was originally...
How many $100?
Of what?
Sorry, this is not Jeopardy, I apologize. Go ahead.
So blockchain was originally conceived to establish a permissionless trust system. To what extent can this decentralized consensus achieve a constructive reconciliation with existing sovereign legal frameworks?
Okay, I'm happy to take that question, but I feel that I need to make just a modest opening statement, which is, for me, the people that have sat up here previously are kind of gods on Mount Olympus from the perspective that I came into blockchain as. Obviously, Marty and Whit, and then Ron Rivest and Adi Shamir, and the A is then Edelman. It came along, and all of these systems that create public key cryptography, not to mention Ralph and Merkle-Trees, Ralph, who I worked with at Xerox PARC. And then finally, David Chaum, who was for many years my inspiration to move into the kind of social engineering of things using cryptographic functions. And so I guess I would say that there have been some statements made earlier in this discussion which I don't think fully align with reality, but I'm going to let them pass over because I have so much respect for the people that have said them. And having said that, I will now turn the attention to the question that you raised, which is, in some sense, governments obviously feel threatened by a whole series of things, and if they feel that their fiat currencies are being challenged by something, then obviously the reaction is one of how do I disabuse and whatnot. But I think looking at history, this is a long-running issue. There was a time when a certain Asian empire banned the personal use of watches. Does anyone know why?
What empire? Or what empire? No.
Okay. They were banned, well, for two reasons. One less interesting than the other. One, because time was considered a sacred thing that the emperor himself was responsible for. But the practical concern, and this really goes to my historical point, is they thought that if everyone had a watch, then they could coordinate times to meet and then overthrow the government. And yet, there is not a nation in the world that has anxiety about people having wristwatches today. And I think the point I'm trying to make is that governments, when they add value, they have a lot of long-term persistence. And whether governments' individual fiat currencies, which, of course, by the use of the word fiat, are in fact just constructs supported only by, I guess, the ultimate force that a government can impose, they are not necessarily have to be the essence of the nation state. And so I really think the answer there is these cryptocurrencies, on one hand, are going about their business kind of doing what they do, incentivized by the people that are choosing to put money into them. And they're operating on an orthogonal layer from the what's going on with the governments. If they prove to create value, and this is one of the things that I'm not going to touch on, just given the prior comments that have been made, they will find a way to persist and then coexist with fiat currencies. So I think, and the problem, of course, with physicists is that we think asymptotically. I would view this as a non-issue over the long term. I know that you feel like you're fighting in the trenches, with your responsibilities, but I don't see any irreconcilable issues between sovereignty and those fiat currencies and the so-called cryptocurrencies.
If cryptocurrency proved to add value, you mentioned it's a coexistence. That's the future you see, but you don't see it as a replacement or government's adoption into the digital asset infrastructure?
Well, again, replacement is a percentages game, and that's going to take time to evolve. People seek value, and if they add value, then there will be ways to coexist for as long as that's needed, and if they prove to be of superior value, then the old ones will wither away. But I do agree, at the very least, with something that Professor Sargent said, which is we are still in the early stages of the evolution of this. I know this puts me down as being disliked by some because I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist and don't believe that it, like Venus from the head of Zeus birthed in immaculate perfection at its start. But it's early days.
I agree. And to Dr. Ashok Kumar, and obviously you can continue to answer the questions I raised, but of course there is a specific question addressed to you. As nodes proliferate globally, how can we leverage algorithmic optimism to further reduce the cost of trust in large-scale collaborations, ensuring that developing nations can equitably access dividends of digital prosperity?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. So first of all, let me to introduce myself. So I am Ashok Kumar from IIT Hyderabad, India, and I did my PhD and masters from IIT Kharagpur. So in this particular blockchain and science forum, I think this is very, very relevant questions because the number of nodes in the blockchain networks is growing further and further. So therefore, the question is that regarding the trust must become cheaper than our coordination failure. Otherwise, what can happen that your only wealthy regions or developing nations can only afford to such kind of activities. And in my opinion, that in this aspect, that your algorithmic optimizations also plays a very, very vital role. So, for example, we can reduce the cost of consensus. And Professor Hillman also told about Mark-Clarity route, one of the verifications. We can have verifications using digital signatures. We can have verifications using hash of the current block. And if we look at that, all the verifications, and we need to somewhere optimize the verifications also. Can we optimize the verifications significantly? So also that another question is that you are having your conventional consensus algorithms, which is the agreement protocol. For example, we are having a proof of works, which requires very energy incentives, the mathematical puzzle solving algorithms. Also, we are having NEP, for example, Byzantine fault tolerance algorithms. So there, if we deploy such kind of algorithms, obviously they will require more competitions, bandwidth, etc. So as a result, we can tell that heavy competitions cannot be equal to the trust. So that we need to work with that. So another interesting thing that we need to do also the trust compressions with the help of cryptographic techniques as well as optimizations also. And of course that the optimizing your reputation trust via the repeated competitions, we should need to avoid it, because repeated the trust competitions will give the more painful competitions, all these things. So another thing is that federated the verifications also require. One of the things could be that can we do local executions, do the local trust competitions, and can we do global trust competitions? So in summary, that I can tell that yes, algorithmic optimization is very much needed in order to reduce cost, bandwidth, etc. So thank you very much.
Scott, do you have anything to?
I'm already over budget on time, so.
No worries. I think I would like to just continue with another question to Dr. Ashok
Yeah.
Kumar Das, that in the face of increasingly complex information warfare and cyber threats, how can we implement sovereign-grade security within blockchain architectures through cryptography while simultaneously safeguarding the privacy rights of individual users?
Yeah, I think this is also another very interesting question. So this gives the relationship between national level security and individual security also. And of course, that specifically that we are talking about now post-quantum cryptography and threshold cryptography. And since the quantum computers are in progress, we are fearing that the traditional algorithms, for example, RSA, and great algorithm by Diffie-Hellman, so can they be broken? And of course, if they are broken, one of the way to increase the key size so that they will be again quantum resistant. But it may require more cost competitions, so that is another way. Another way that as we work also on the post-quantum cryptography, can we employ lattice-based cryptography, code-based or hash-based cryptography to do so? As a result, we can have, instead of blockchain, we can have the concept of quantum blockchain or post-quantum blockchain, where that post-quantum secure algorithms can be deployed in the blockchain itself. So that this is because that, for example, if I have encrypted data is put in the blockchain, and attacker can harvest now all the data, and once the quantum computers are in place, they can decrypt later. So this is the model they use in the primarily in the post-quantum era, harvest now and decrypt later. So that kind of model probably they can deploy. If we need to think about the post-quantum cryptography as one of the alternative in that case. So another thing is that, of course, that we can use the zero-knowledge proofs for this purpose. Also that decentralized identity with the selective disclosure. These kind of things that we can probably employ for better sovereign kind of security in that case.
And this summit has frequently highlighted the concept of physical intelligence. And can blockchain actually serve as the essential bridge of trust between the physical world, i.e. robotics, Internet of Things, sensors, and digital intelligence, i.e. AI and large language models, etc.?
Where does that go?
Both.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I think one of the challenge is that in the AI things, can we secure the data first? Because training data must be authentic and genuine. Where the data is coming, for example, if I am gathering data from IoT devices or robots, etc., so can we deploy some authentication mechanisms or some secure mechanisms, at least to aggregate the data? So where the data should be trained and AI models could be deployed. Otherwise, that there will be several AI email related attacks. For example, you also work on that, something known as the data poisoning attacks, model stealing attack, and all other attacks are there. So where adversary can purposefully change your the level of the data, which is known as the level flipping attack. Or the most probably that it can insert some noise in the data poisoning attack, etc. So therefore, this is one of the very important aspect, that how to gather data securely so that I may ensure that my data is authentic, not altered. Then I probably apply the machine learning models for better predictions, etc. So I think that this should be given some importance of data itself.
And Scott?
Sure. I just want to weigh in on maybe one or two things that have come up here in that discussion. First, since you talked on the quantum, post-quantum issues, I do want to weigh in on the side that, to me, these are meaningful threats, but I think they are, in the grand scheme of things, relatively manageable over time. The progress that's being made in quantum computing while it's breathtaking to news reporters and those who have an interest in getting further funding, it is proceeding at a more modest pace. And I think the concern that we might be caught off guard and suddenly the whole system collapses is really, as I say, weighing things like getting bitten by a shark or struck by lightning. I think it's kind of low on that scale. So I'd just like to weigh in on that quantum bet, that I think that's going to be fine. Now, getting back to this issue of trust, for me the real issue is people are cooperative and communicating bunch of souls. That's what Adam Smith taught us, why dogs don't trade bones and whatnot. And so all that's really needed is efficient mechanisms for us to know how to coordinate and collaborate. And at a level a little above whether longest chain is under threat from some of these papers, some of the authors whom I have worked with in the past, is less the concern, I think, than will we still be able to have confidence in the interactions we have with each other, and more pointedly, who it is that we're interacting with. Because, not to take things too far afield, we're rapidly reaching a point where seeing is, quite frankly, no longer believing. And the need to have identities that are unforgeable or protected, in a sense, by consensus, is really, I think, the emerging issue. So long as we know who we're talking with, and we can efficiently verify that, and then we can coordinate information that we agree on, at least amongst that set of working parties, I think we're good. I apologize if I'm speaking kind of at a higher philosophical level than the sum overall I minus delta concerns in this Stiglitz constraint. But yeah, I think as long as we've got those problems down, we're going to be okay.
Thank you. I think you're talking about digital identity, and of course, in the future, you can imagine a lot of the traders on a digital platform are not going to be human, and it's going to be AI agents. And how do we actually coordinate during that time? And that is something we need to consider. And I've got another question for Scott, actually. Looking ahead to the next decade, where do you foresee the most significant restructuring of scientific research via decentralized science? And will it fundamentally disrupt scientific publishing, or will it reshape the global models of research funding allocation?
Okay, well, obviously peer review is, I think, kind of the foundational concept, and we've had that at least since the Royal Society's early days. Okay, so will that itself be under attack? I doubt it. Okay, now so-called D-Sci, which has the admirable quality of rhyming with D-Fi, but it's not clear to me that beyond that it has predictive power. Again, what we're really looking at is lowered transaction costs for people to coordinate their activities. And this goes back at least to the early 1900s with Ron Coase and concept of a corporation, where we organize into these groups that collectively work together so long as we can keep the transaction costs low enough. And so I don't see I see a gradual evolution in how scientific research is done. I think that the foundational issues of coordinating activities and peer review are going to be in place for a long time, but even things like that have surfaced in the last 25, 30 years, like the archive, for pre-publishing. All of these are meaningful increase in efficiencies of the system, but no, I don't see fundamental changes.
Thank you very much. And we have a few minutes left. I wonder if the audience would like to raise some questions or express your views, because I could see that there are some contrasting views here compared to the previous panels and speeches. Anything?
Well, you asked about changes in publishing, and one of the big things is it used to be that the IEEE, the CACM could charge page charges, and about 20 years ago there was a symposium that I chaired which was dealing with this issue and whether page charges was still going to be sustainable. And I asked Bob Luckey, who you know from Bell Labs, he's now deceased, to speak, because I thought he'd speak in favor of it because he was on the IEEE Publications Board. And he said, no, they got to get used to the fact that they're not going to be able to raise this money. So I think a friend of mine pointed out that unless my papers were available free of charge on the internet, they may as well not exist. And so fortunately, most of my publications, at least they were protected by copyright with IEEE, were before the internet, and so I have permission to post them. But today it's a problem.
Yeah, I do come down strongly in favor of the natural mechanism of effectively open sourcing of these things. The page publication fees, I think, just the elephant in the room is that they're monopolies that need to yield to better market efficiencies. And when I cite archive, it's really a kind of circumvention of that as one example. I think it will only continue to go in that direction. In other words, I'm not trying to suggest that saying information wants to be free is enough of a justification for everything, but peer-to-peer research, peer-to-peer review is done between peers, and if the centralizing organizations aren't bringing us efficiency, then they can easily be bypassed. And those page charges really are just the opposite of.
So Ralph Merkel's original paper was rejected by the CACM, as I pointed out, I think. And when I was talking with Stuart Haber in the bus over here, he told me that the collusion in MD5 was initially rejected by crypto because the woman from China who submitted it didn't know, had some language problems, and she had some other issues with the paper. But he worked on it.
And again, it was just a big Indian versus little Indian issue, as I understand.
No, it was more than that. It was that the paper was hard to understand, according to Stuart. Stuart, are you here?
He's right behind you.
Yes. Well, it was that. So, for those not in the very small circle of experts in this thing, the question has to do with hash function collisions. That is, finding two different documents, two different digital records that have the same MD5 fingerprint. MD5 was the most widely used, probably still. I mean, there's code running on all your cell phones right now there's MD5 still buried in code there. The most widely used hash function. And at the crypto conference of 2004, an unknown researcher, Professor Xiaoyun Wang, from a provincial university in China, came to crypto with a design for attacking MD5.
And her paper had been rejected.
Her paper had been rejected by crypto. It was very hard to read, and she had a technical mistake. But in fact, peer review worked. I happened to be running the rump session at a session of sort of breaking results at that conference, and I made sure to sit her down with her translator. One of her students who had better English was was there, sit her down with a couple of cryptanalytic experts who figured out what her small technical mistake was. This was 3 in the afternoon on a Monday in August 2004, when it's 3 in the morning or thereabouts in China. So she called up her students in China and said, take this short list of constants, write them down backwards, and run the same algorithm. Next day, she had the world's first MD5 collisions. And so I'll tell this story because it's a good story. She was an unknown researcher. I put her up at the RUM session. She gave her talk, very hard to understand, but her last slide was clear. These 2 strings of bits, two short sequences of hex digits collide have the same MD5 collision. Thank you very much. Any questions? And in
QED.
and the entire room at the crypto conference stood up and gave her a welcoming standing ovation in a way I have never seen at a technical meeting ever. She'd appeared out of nowhere, as it were, and shown the cryptographic community, that's cryptography, not cryptocurrency, that we didn't know how hash functions worked.
Thank you for that amazing story. Nothing can be better than that to conclude today's session. So thank you, Scott, and thank you, Dr. Ashok Kumar Das. And I would like to say, on behalf of KuCoin and on behalf of the World Laureates Summit, we would like to thank all the experts today to share their wisdom, and we'd like to thank all the audience for participating in this panel. We wish you a very good day.
Thank you.